stuck in the mail.
Hi, welcome to Stuck in the Mail podcast, episode 22, believe it or not. And this is a very special episode indeed on the one and only, absolutely incomparable 70s non-rock, amazing folk, Laurel Canyon, classically gospel Bach-influenced legend, Judee Sill.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. It's definitely, with the exception of Flower Traveling Band from Japan, the deepest cut that I have unleashed on the Stuck in the Mail crew fan base.
Well, I will say, I mean, you introduced her to me, but the documentary, like, she's kind of making a bit of she's making inroads into popular consciousness a little bit.
Oh, definitely. And especially in musician circles, I think I actually learned about her just through being a vinyl guy. You know, you learn about these records that you'll never see. And then when you finally see one, which in my case was about, I'm going to say 3 months ago on the coast, it was definitely this summer, I found this in Fort Bragg, instantly recognized it, instantly kind of had a small like panic attack. Bought it. It was $1 or two. It was from a radio station over there. It's not KZYX, but they're not really in true operation anymore. Took it home. It doesn't play at all, but I will always cherish it. I'm actually secretly trying to find her second album, Heart Food, but I'm not allowing myself to cheat. It has to come to me, kind of like how this album did. So we will see,
So,
hopefully.
for those who have no idea who we're talking about, who is Judee Sill?
Well, there's definitely a lot that can be said. There is an excellent documentary that is rumored to have taken over 10 years to assemble, and that is called The Lost Angel, The Genius of Judee Sill. I always refer to it as The Lost Genius. I think you could call it either. Um, there's no easy place to start with Judy's story. I don't know how much of her story we're gonna give. It's one of hardship. She actually came out of old money, like Hollywood money. Her stepfather was a Tom and Jerry animator. She came from a bad household. Her mom died young at when Judy was 20. It was the 60s. She's actually falls into a bit of a Patty Hearst comparison for a while. She was apparently robbing banks with a boyfriend, a bad influence. She was doing so much bad stuff that I think Judy's story actually begins musically when she is sentenced to 9 months in a reform school, and she finds her place behind the piano, learning choir chords on the piano, whereas when she was 5, she learned piano from her real dad's bar in Oakland. So a little different story there, you know, from boogie woogie to gospel for
Yeah,
real.
that's a good summary. And speaking of the documentary, I mean, that is the best place to start. You told me, you were like, you've got to watch it. You've got to watch it. And I was like, okay, okay. And I was so amazed by it that I watched it 2 nights in a row. You know, you get like 48 hours to stream something. I
Yeah,
watched it
nice.
twice.
There you go. Beautiful. And
Uh,
give me a little bit of what Julie thought of it compared to your first take,
I
or maybe.
mean, yeah, we didn't really talk about it too much, honestly. You just kind of take it in. It's so beautifully done, that documentary, with the drawings and the moment where she's like crying and then her tear falls on the bird and then the bird. I'm just like, wow, this was a cut above what they needed to do to tell her story. They clearly had, it was a labor of love for people who love Judy's music. I had never heard of her before, and never. And I would say this in music circles, music nerd circles, you know, this is what you hope one day will happen, that you'll find an artist who has been completely ignored by the mainstream. I mean, that wasn't the case at first, which is interesting. She was promoted highly when Geffen first signed her, but she's certainly not on any of the best album lists that you'll ever find, although this album absolutely belongs. I would say Heart Food does as well.
Yeah.
It defies comparisons. It defies categories. And if you had heard this in 1971, I mean, Joni Mitchell Blue had just come out or was about to.
Right.
How
That's
do you
the
go up against that?
that's the comparison. Joni's the legend, but Judee from the same scene, from the same Crosby and Nash, all those guys, the Laurel Canyon folk scene, the non-rock scene, Asylum Records. She was the first artist on Asylum. Asylum, the biggest non-rock label ever. Like seriously, there's never been another one. Tom Waits, everyone, a lot of more obscure, like her boyfriend JD Souther. Tough one to
Mhm.
say without the N at the end there, but so many names. And I don't even know Asylum that well, but of course later they would produce the Eagles. Everyone knows them, and they're kind of considered the corporate version of country folk rock, right? But Judee from the start, and I was just listening to Heart Food. I played this album so much when I first got a listenable copy because I got a reissue later I could play, as well as I also got a collector's copy as well from the True Nerd Corner here. But I play this album so much, and I have a couple listenings that I can, even relate to how it was to hear because it's just you're the musician here. So apparently, besides being heavily Bach influenced and gospel influenced, she is writing these songs, and Heart Food was completely produced and arranged by her, where she's doing these four-part choral fugues.
Mhm.
There's a lot going on here that's not easy to know if you don't know a lot about music. You just think, "Oh, wow, that's nice."
Yeah, well, I like in the documentary, um, is it the lamb? What's the song about the lamb and the crown? I forget the name.
The Lamb
The
ran away with a crown.
lamb ran away with a crown. Thank you. I really enjoyed that part musically, where basically the person who was describing that song was like, "Why was this not a bigger hit?" Because of the way it develops. To your point, the way it kind of ends almost with a round. It kind of becomes this.
Yeah,
It's this almost baroque.
serious round.
It's this baroque melody,
Yeah.
and it it's so pleasing at first, but then the more you listen to it, it's hypnotic because it starts to go around and around and around. And songs like that don't just happen. Like that takes so much craftsmanship and care, and you
Yeah.
just get the feeling that um, she was such an artist that was swept up in the joy of making this music, but then to only be kind of have the rug pulled out from under her when the public didn't
Well,
take note.
not to defend Geffen or anything like that, but Judee Sill's music is what can only be described as not marketable, I mean, I think there's no way she would have been first. There's no way Nash and Crosby would have taken her out on tour. She could only be an opener, and she hated being an opener. She wasn't able, apparently, I'd imagine, to work with other musicians on the level that say Joni Mitchell could do. I think she was she's often described as being very gutsy, very very fierce, but then also very that that's the dichotomy of Judee Sill. She's also her music is very peaceful and it was very calming and soothing, and she's a lamb and she's a wolf, that concept she sings about so much in her music, especially in the next album, the kiss, the communion of those two opposites. That is what Judee Sill is so difficult to get to the bottom of because we have this artist, you listen to her and then I can only imagine what the real person was like because she had to have been she's just so intelligent.
Yeah, and intense. And you get the sense that
Yeah.
when people didn't respect what she was doing, she didn't suffer fools.
No, she probably left a lot of those opening shows and she probably pissed off so many musicians that were trying to give her a chance.
Yeah.
I did make a list of comparative artists, and I'm having a hard time reading with my contacts in, but off the top of my head, one of the ones that I picked besides Joni Mitchell, which is an obvious one, was Patti Smith, because I feel that
Mm.
her spirit there was so much more in tune, not how her music was, but her spirit. especially as a female artist in the 70s,
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you know,
and it's interesting too because when she was getting started, I mean, she was, like you said, she was in that scene with Graham Nash and David Crosby and Jackson Brown and all these artists. Linda Ronstadt, her contributions to that documentary are so insightful,
Mhm.
and you know, like like a lot of them covered her songs. The Turtles, of course.
Right.
I guess that was her first big break was when the Turtles did Lady-O.
Hey, I can elaborate on that a little bit. Her first husband was Bob Harris. Bob was with the Mothers, and I'm drawing a blank on the other thing. But so the Turtles, there's two guys in the Turtles that left the Turtles to join the Mothers. So she knew Bob, and then there was this whole little clique. So the first money Judy made was selling Lady O, the publishing rights to the Turtles, and then she must have been good friends with them because, of course, obviously she released Lady O as her own song, which it is on her first album, which we're discussing today, self-titled, and it's a great song. Sometimes people have pulled into question the lyrics of it. I haven't. But I mean, Judy's just one of those people where we probably won't hit on a lot of lyrical interpretation in this because I think it's a pretty unique experience with her.
It
Um,
is. It's metaphysical. It's spiritual. It's the lofty heavenly realm. You know, um, mixed with
ethereal, ethereal.
ethereal, mixed with the everyday. It's that is she singing about a god or about a lover or both?
Right, right. No, that's all there. And then with her, the other interesting thing is I think she's probably the greatest Christian rock artist that didn't write Christian rock. I mean, that's the thing. No, she
Well,
she probably wearing the cross on this album. It was just like her thing. She was really into all kinds of theologies and intellectual pursuits, and I don't doubt that it was intentional, but it certainly, it removed probably both her fans. It's her story. Her story, as getting back to the marketable point, is one of just there's such a certain amount of just impossibility with her, and I think that was always part of her too, that she had to live with that because she's just little ray of light in so much darkness.
yeah, it's hard to hear "My Man on Love" and not think that that is a Christian song.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about the that insane song on the second album, "The Donor," with Kyrie eleison and "God have mercy on me" from the Mass, and
Yeah.
she's it's really intense for pop music.
She she made the ultimate, we'll call it pop, but the ultimate pop record. I mean, this is coming out on a major label. I was listening to Heart Food because I've heard self-titled so much, and on Heart Food, her second album, I can't help but feel that cover was a real disappointment, where she's just kind of looking down, and it looks kind of dour. And
Yeah,
I think the first album cover is so amazing, but Heart Food is such an amazing album. I really can't wait to find it. Even if I just find a reissue, I'm buying it. I'll find the original. Uh,
that's gonna be
uh,
great when you end up with it. I can't wait
yeah.
for that.
Can I tell you about another artist that is a definite comparison for me and is one you've absolutely never heard of?
Sure.
And the record nerds out there are going to like this one. I'll start the tagline with the exciting tag of, I believe he is the artist that is most likely to have been abducted by a UFO in New Mexico. So
I have
that
no idea.
it's a great Judee Sill comparison because it's just kind of a little bit almost unbelievable. But in this case, it's very true. And his name was Jim Sullivan. He was an LA artist. He was kind of a Jim Belushi, kind of a bar guy. He put out two albums just like Judee Sill. He was beloved by other musicians and he was championed by major label execs. I don't remember what his first album was out, but his second actually came out on Playboy Records, which was a real record label. And then he kind of failed at life a lot during all this, like Judee, and eventually headed to New York, abandoning his wife and child. Was last seen in New Mexico near Roswell, wandering drunk, and was never seen again. And his hit song, UFO.
A kindred spirit.
And he's kind of he's almost like a D what's the name? D Boone. He's almost like a D Boone character too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll give you my comparison. But again, this is what we do. I know you can't compare her, but I get the same feeling listening to her that I get when I listen to Nick Drake.
Yes, 100%. It's on my list.
Yep. I just think that there's that sort of spiritual yearning. There's the strings, the really dense string parts, orchestrations, that kind of serenity that you feel with Nick Drake, but a little bluesy too. Like
Yeah.
there's that, I don't know, it's a product of its time. No one's ever quite captured that. And I don't think that she sounds like Nick Drake in her music necessarily, but I don't know. I feel like that.
It's spot on. She's the US female Drake. Nick Drake. Nick Drake.
Right.
Um,
So talking about her marketability or lack thereof, I mean, here's the thing: the songs, it a bit of an acquired taste, but I vividly remember the first time that I listened to Joni Mitchell because a friend was playing Blue, and it was too much to take in, all the
oh
leaps
yeah.
and jumps and the
Oh yeah.
octaves and the intervals, and it's just interesting because I get it that the songs aren't as accessible, but on the other hand, something like Jesus Was a Crossmaker is very accessible. It sounds like could be Carole King.
Yes. Crayon Angels, the opener. Lady
Here's
O.
what here's my take on it. I think a big part of what hurt her with this album is the track order.
Yeah.
The reason
You
I
can't
say
deny
that,
that ending, though. You can't deny that ending.
well, that I just feel like there's so many amazing songs kind of buried at the end. I mean, if she had put, just looking at it right now, like if Jesus Was a Crossmaker was like track 2, for example, and if you put like Enchanted Sky Machines, incredible song. If that was up at number 3, and then end it with Loping Along the Cosmos, which is probably my personal favorite.
Really. I thought loping, maybe she made up a word.
No,
That's a,
it goes along with the Ridge Rider. It's that whole
yeah.
clippity clop thing.
Yeah, she has a lot of the, country and Western she was dating a kind of more Southern rock asylum rock artist. The influences of Graham Parsons are here.
Yeah. Well, it feels very California to me. Like
It huge
e-
scene.
even it feels like rustic, like rural California, like the Ridge Rider and all that reminds me of like the Sierra Mountains. I
Yeah,
don't
east
know.
side. Yeah. Yep.
But I guess I just look at it and the album start to finish is incredible and it's quite a listening experience. But I just kind of wonder if you were a record buyer in 1971, could you get through the archetypal man? Like, could you get to the songs that are catchy? Because you have to get through a bunch of that.
Well, I believe either Jesus Was a Crossmaker or Lamb Ran Away with the Crown were actually the singles. So they were and they're the known ones. And if anything, just reading titles, seeing the album, you're going to be, normal person in the 70s. You're going to go, oh, that seems very religious.
That's true.
So obviously, I think Judee, as much as she complains about, not back in the day, she wanted to be a huge star. She actually got I think a bass clef tattoo to remind her when she came out of her first drug
Yeah.
issues. She's like, well, I'm gonna get this tattoo, so let's remind me.
Hmm.
And that can be the case. When I was 18, I got the 45 adapter tattooed right here. And it took me almost 15, 20 years, but then I remembered to get into 45s, and it was in a very low period of my life. And it essentially led to completely changing my life. So that can happen.
Yeah.
If you're a driven person, I don't think you need a tattooing on your shoulder, but uh, it's really interesting because I'm sure Judee could have done just about anything. I think of her in that reform school, and I look at pictures of Judee, and I see I see someone that society not only probably thought was Christian rock, but I see someone that society probably said, "Oh, there's a plain Jane, you know, there's just kind of a nothing, and she's not glamorous or this or that." And she really is just who she is, and she presents that so well, and her ability so well that even in that reform school, you know, she took to that gospel organ because she didn't have any friends, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. Like I, she she has kind of a librarian vibe a little
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
And it's a shame that that could turn people off. But if you think about it at the time, it
Yeah.
was the era of the California image. Like, what, I don't know. You think about Going to California, the Zeppelin song, right?
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
girl out there with flowers in her hair, and it's the whole California ideal. This is 1971. This is really
Yeah.
early.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're Joni Mitchell and Judee Sill, both of whom are writing incredible music, it's not about the way they look, but it kind of could have been at the time.
Yeah. Well, I think Joni is probably fierier on stage than Judy, you know. I think that when Judy probably performed, I mean, everyone talks about what is it called? The old whistle test, the Kiss performance. And that's just her. That's what she wanted. She wanted her audience almost like I don't know, who's a famous piano player who could sell out concerts. Like that's what she wanted, you know.
Yeah.
Could you imagine though, like being a Crosby and Nash? I keep leaving out Stills because I think there was a period without him there. But could you imagine going to one of those shows, being a kind of a washed up out of the 60s, kind of still hanging on to something not real, and then Judy comes on the stage with a guitar or with a piano, and you're just like, oh, when is David Crosby getting on the stage? You know?
But yeah, she was not set up to win by being put in front of these
No,
rock bands.
no.
And think about it too, like in the documentary, you know, you hear about how in the studio the musicians had to play it the way she wanted them to play it, and she had a very specific way she wanted them to do it. And I can imagine it would have been a nightmare to try to play with her live. So you're right, she wanted to be a solo artist,
Yep.
and that has a very specific setting where it's appropriate, you know?
No, it's people that saw it early on were like, wow, this is something. And I think they're actually, you know, there were so many people that were actually sheltering her along and championing her along and believed in her so much, even Geffen. And then she, when things didn't work out, which is how we all can be, you know, lashed out against those people who were trying to really help her.
Yeah.
That's a bad cycle. I mean, she died at 35 in 79. She had a hard life, you know. Her life
Yeah.
is a real true dichotomy, you know.
I know. I mean, you think about like what might have been, and it's also hard to imagine what might have been. Like she's this kind of tragic figure who had this glorious run for 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
and ultimately is just to be able to find her and to be able to find this music that just completely is not on the radar is so satisfying and such a joy. And I, for one, am thrilled that she is getting the recognition now. Like
Yeah.
now I'm the one going around to people saying, "Hey, have you ever heard of Judee Sill? There's a
Yeah.
documentary you should watch."
I really did like her at first, but I was like, oh, Mike's gonna like this even more than me at first. And hopefully you like it forever because, you know, that's how music is. I had to look through a lot of dusty old records to come across this one, you know, and I'm glad it did. And it does fit a certain, we won't say DJ, but selector mood where I'm like, oh, that's really what I need to kind of,
Yeah.
I think it's a very mellowing experience. And I played her record here. I have a little better setup here. And oh my gosh, it is an amazing experience to hear her voice on a good sound system,
Mm.
even with some just okay speakers. It just jumps. It jumps out. I can only
Hmm.
imagine a quadraphonic release with four and you know, a bass woofer. I don't think we need that, but yeah, I mean, it's just. Do we want to even touch on songs here or lyrical? Do you have any comment?
Yeah. Well, I just was going to say, hearing you talk just then, so much of music is, it takes me back to a place, right, where I was when I loved that album.
Yeah.
This one is going to take me back to right now. Like when
Yeah.
I hear this album, because it's brand new for me and I had no
Mhm.
category for this music before, I just know in 10 years I'll look back and think about what I was going through right now and in my life. And the best music does that for you. How cool that it was made in 71 and here we are in 2024 and it's
Yep.
reaching us and it's moving us, both of us.
Yeah, I mean that's the timelessness of music. You know, that's why some of us hoard to like things like vinyl or cassettes even now, to have that tangible because when you have something in your life and you see it, it can be all you need, but it doesn't have to even be there. It can just be your mind and it triggers that, part of your what's now your DNA and it allows you to unlock that, oh, I want to listen to that, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's kind of cheating almost to have a 12 by 12 visual. you know, to
Yep.
some degree, it really is. But I like having the objects around too, and always have. Um, but I did want to talk about the end of this album. I don't know if I can even describe it, but you're an end of the album kind of guy, and I was
Sure.
listening to this last night for just to get one more listen through. And I honestly, I just gotten some really great jazz and some Miles Davis, and I was like, I don't even want to listen to Judee Sill, but I was like, I want to do it one more time. And nothing really hit me. I'd been playing it so much, and I was kind of tired of playing it. And the end of this album, it played, and my wife Sarah was like, "What was that?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I know. What was that?" And we listened it back, and there really is. It's the song's called Abracadabra. Sorry, Steve Miller. But it just has this. Do you recall it? I don't even know what to describe it. It's very orchestral.
Yes.
It's it just kind of it just kind of leaves you with the strangest sensation. And it
Hmm.
is really perfect how she just was like, this is how the song's gonna go out, We're gonna have this moment of I don't even know how to describe it.
Transcendence.
Yeah, but it's completely different than the song too.
I know what you mean. It is a memorable ending. The song itself, honestly, Abracadabra is one that I feel like I need to hear a few more times.
Yeah.
There's some other ones that you kind of get the first couple. Um, that one has eluded me so far.
It's okay. You're gonna pay extra attention to that end now.
I will. But the ending, I mean, just talking about looking at the track list, like what are your highlights? What stands out? I mean, to
Um,
me, listening through it for me, I like it until I get to like halfway through Lamb Ran Away with a Crown into Ladio, and at that point I'm like, whoa, something is happening here. That's the point where the album just goes into some really introspective sort of I don't know, it's very moving. And this is what I mean about the track order. Like you have to get into it, at least I do.
yeah.
I love Ridge Rider.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
That
a
is
beautiful song, the poetry of the lyrics, just the horse hooves and everything. It's so like
yep.
wacky at first, but then the more you listen, the more it makes sense. It's this unattainable lover slash, you know, holy
Yeah.
man slash deity.
Yes, yes. And also believed to be in tribute to JD,
Hmm.
her muse at the time. She had several muses.
Yeah,
It's
her muse. Yeah,
rough.
absolutely.
It's
I
rough to
mean,
truly attribute or not without asking her personally, but I'm sure there were lots of things going into all her songs. So
to me, Lopin Along the Cosmos and then Enchanted Sky Machines, that's just like a 1-2
yeah. I know it, but
incredible.
I can't hear it in my head right now, Enchanted Sky Machines, but of course I know it. Um,
It's
yeah,
upbeat. It's the one that plays during the credits of the documentary.
yeah. I have this interesting idea in the back of my mind when you were talking about the Ridge Rider and there's Phantom Cowboy, and I was like, wow, what if Judee had like she never would have went for it for all the money in the world, but what if David Geffen was like, hey, Graham Parsons just passed. Why don't you be the front woman for the Flying Burrito Brothers? Change it up a little bit and you'll be a star. And she'd be like, basically get bent.
Hmm.
But could it have worked? I don't know. Emmy Lou was with Graham a lot. She'd have
It's
to.
hard to imagine. It is.
It would be the equivalent of who's a really good musician right now? I'll just say Lady Gaga. It would be the equivalent of Lady Gaga's self-produced, self-released Ramones album. What's the point? Do three chords, I can do four. I mean, she's a Judee Sill, we haven't said enough about, is a talented musician and I would argue most likely a savant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think she embodies some of her own lyrics sometimes. Like, I mean, when I was listening to the Ridge Rider today, it's, the ridge he's riding is mighty thin. I mean, that's her life. She was riding a really thin ridge.
yes, incredibly so. Incredibly so. And it's weird to think how her life really existed in like, compared to like these albums coming out on essentially a major label, you know.
And can we talk about the year 1971 and how, I mean,
Is that when the Manson family comes into everything and takes the Beach Boys house, or is that later?
I just mean in music history, I
Oh,
don't know if there's ever been a better year for albums.
oh, okay. I thought you wanted to read the climate of the times because I know they
Oh,
were confused and I know they had a lot of drugs. Poor Judy succumbed to them. She had just had such a rough life. The whole Patty Hearst thing, where it's like she was robbing banks and stuff, I was like, okay, so a lot of this feels a little sensationalized, but even if it's sensationalized, it's still sensational because her
mhm.
life, she seemed like a real rebel. She was a real wolf in sheep's clothing, you know? She
Yep.
really was. And I believe that. I believe that she was probably a very difficult person because people who are truly driven, people with, like let's say Steve Jobs is a totally different thing, when they know exactly what they want, that there's no other answer. And that's very tough, especially
Yep.
for a musician.
Well, what about you? What songs stand out to you?
I like the opener and then kind of the hits. Crayon Angel, Lamb Ran Away with a Crown is great. What do you think your take on lyrically on that song from any standpoint?
You're gonna have to give me a second.
I think it's an interesting song. I wish I could remember the verses, but I do think that the chorus is essentially preaching the turn the other cheek.
Okay.
I do think that in this, it's saying that, she's like saying how she's get ready for battle and
Hmm.
there's all these things. So she's saying that she is going to be, the wolf, I guess. But then what she says is that ultimately the meek, the lamb, come and they take the crown, they win, So obviously a lot of biblical
Yeah.
reference in there, but I think that's what she's saying is to stay meek, to be the lamb. The lamb shall
Mhm.
win.
But I laughed so hard I cried. Honestly, just looking at the lyrics, this just proves that I still need more time with this.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we could do a part two and 22 more episodes. I definitely want to do Heart Food. I just can't wait to find it. I might demand that we do it as soon as I find it.
We'll do a live episode, like
Have you listened? Yeah, have you listened to Heart Food
just once.
once? I might like it more. It might just be saying that because I've listened to the one, but wow. Because she completely produced and arranged it, so it's really her piece of work. I think it might be better.
I
Um,
mean, The Kiss has got to be your signature song, right?
It is. It is their signature song. Some people might include Lady O pretty highly because it was because of the Turtles cover, got her going. And it is a beautiful song. I mean, it's a little ballady, I guess, compared to some other songs, but I do think Lady O is very beautiful.
Well, and I mean, The Kiss just is sublime.
The Kiss is absolutely, I mean, it cannot be covered.
Hmm.
It is uncoverable. Uh, It is. And I mean, when I hear that song, it's really about something. I don't know how far we want to talk about that song. We're not on that album.
Yeah, we should probably save that.
Let's save it. Just know
But
that it's a good one.
hey, kids, if you haven't heard of Judee Sill, there's your place to start.
Yep. Yep. It sounds somewhere between, I think, grime, hip hop, And what is that thing called with the blast beats the kids are doing with the slide whistle? That's my take on modern music.
Well, so I don't know. Have we convinced people to give Judee Sill a try?
I think so, and I think we've. I was a little bit overwhelmed by this episode uh,
Yeah.
coming into it, and I think it's been good, and I think we should keep it here, and we shall return with more.
The only other thing I want to say, which is very silly, but I just have to say it.
Go for it.
I find it very endearing, her vocal style.
Yeah.
How she has no every vowel has its own syllable. You know what I mean? There's no diphthong. So in other words, friend becomes friend.
Yeah.
And do you know who this reminds me of,
Southern
Casey?
twang. She
What's
got a
that?
little southern twang, a little bit.
Yeah, and I love it, but it also probably made her a little bit harder for her. But yeah, I I'll just leave it at that. But I find her vocal style to be very endearing and
Yes. Yeah.
idiosyncratic.
Yes.
All right,
Uh,
so
Judee
uh,
is an artist. If you like Joni Mitchell, if you like Townes Van Zant's songwriting and his ability to present this incredibly somber song with somehow this tone like he's Superman, if you like Elliott Smith, the tragic Elliott Smith from Portland's soft, whispery, beautiful Nick Drake like vocals, you will love Judee Sill because there's no other artist, and she gets her own category, and we don't know what it is. She's just lopping around along the cosmos.
perfectly said.
Yep. I mean, I just had this image of her and the Grateful Dead during their country rock era too. Would that work
Mhm.
more than the Burrito Brothers?
Yeah, I think so. That could have been cool.
She would have been like, the lead background singer of like four girls. That's not quite the same. I think
Well,
she stuck to her guns for good reason. We wouldn't have this music if it hadn't been, put on wax, as they say.
I'm just glad we have it.
Yeah, exactly. It stands as a true testament, as an achievement.
Mhm.
It does. And we hope you all enjoyed it. That was episode 22. Let's cut to the next thing. Mike, do you
Okay.
have a pick? And is it on CD or paper? Or...
I do have a pick. I have to say, this was a late. This is an idea I had just a couple days ago. I
Okay.
already planned what I was going to do, but then as these things happen,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, I want to see if you can guess this. For whatever reason, lines from this album. This is something that you and I both loved when we were probably 15, 16 years old.
Good.
And I'm revisiting it. Some lines from this album just sort of hit me. They stick with you. This one, I heard the line in my head when the Jehovah Witnesses come to my house on a Saturday. Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
know exactly what this one is. This is Orange by John Spencer Blues Explosion.
When's the last time you listened to this?
I have it on vinyl,
Do you?
original, and that's
This
going to
is
be a tough.
terrible. I'm
That's going
really
to be a
sorry.
tough one. Put it in front of your shirt. Wow. Yes, it's a silver cover. So, anywho, I have it on vinyl. It's amazing. I've listened to it in at least 5 years. There it is, and I've come across it again, and I was like, should I buy another of these? When am I going to see this again? Because it's so cool. Because it was a soft CD. You remember
Yes,
those?
I
They were
do.
kind of liked, kind of hated. It was almost like more of a vinyl thing.
Yeah, it's one of the first of those soft CDs I can remember ever seeing, and it
Yeah.
was a silver CD. And anyway, it just I hadn't thought about it, Casey, in 20 years.
It absolutely rips.
It's it does. I just was listening to it, and I was like, I have to talk about this
And
because
especially the rest of John Spencer's storied career, which is that's the one. It's the one.
mhm,
Can't wait. Huge
that's
fan.
the sweat.
Yep. Feels so good about a piece of trash. The worms are drunk. They're drinking from my glass. Something like that.
It's really something. So it's a bit of a hard turn from Judy Sill, but it spoke to me. So something made me think of that line.
I like it. I like it.
So that's
All
coming
right.
up,
All
kids.
right. True classic.
Peace. See y'all
Later.
later.